Mainly church music, really, because the Andrew Jackman, who's the keyboard player in the scene, was like my buddy from the age of 6 or something, and I was in the Boy Scouts, no, the Cubs actually, and and that was kind of boring. And he said, "Why don't you come join the choir? Because we make 2 and 6 at weddings on the weekend." And I kind of, well, I liked Andrew and his brothers, Greg and Jeremy. So it was like we were like the guys on the block. So yeah, I went with them, and then all of a sudden we got Barry Rose came down from Cambridge to become the choir master at St Andrew's Church, Kingsbury, and transformed like this dead end choir into the best choir in England, like in about 3 years or something. And it was like unbelievable experience. So that was really my main influence. Well, yeah, because his father was let me get this right. I think was it
clarinetist, was it?
Clarinet player
was it? Yeah.
in the London Symphony Orchestra, and so he had. And so all of the kids, Andrew and his other 2 brothers, were all very musically oriented as kids, So, I went into the choir with him, when I was young. It's like, yeah, we were linked inextricably. I suppose what happened was when the Beatles became like an item, in 1963 when I was 15, everyone who was 15 thought, that looks like a good job, I want to do that. That's really what happened.
Me too.
Same as Steve. It was like, well, I don't know if I should go and work in the foundry. I think I'll go do that. Well, yeah, then it was interesting because it was like we were doing a lot of Motown covers, and Andrew and I like getting choirs together, and Steve was like doing the lead vocal, and it was like and Andrew used to set it up about you singing something like, and I go, all right, it was good. And I guess was Peter Banks there too. Maybe. I don't know, but sometimes we had 4-part harmonies and stuff. Well, when that we got involved with Peter Huggett, remember him? Was that with you? Was that
was with me? That was the scene.
Yeah, well, and we recorded that. You remember that? In some studio in Denmark Street?
We recorded Merry Go Round.
And Heatwave.
And Heatwave. And It's All Right by the Impressions. It's All Right.
We did?
We did, yeah. We did those 2 tracks.
It's all right.
It's yeah. And what a shame we don't know where they are.
Yeah.
Well, that's right. I remember that, yeah.
I remember the funny thing was that Peter Huggett, who was like, I don't know, he was a bit like a Michael Caine of Denmark Street, wasn't he?
Yeah.
With like
Lonnie Donegan's bass player.
And he'd been over, was he?
Yeah, originally, Lonnie Donegan's bass player.
He'd been over to New York, and he came back and he bought us this single that he said was going to be a huge hit.
Reach Out, I'll Be There.
Reach Out, I'll Be There, yeah. And we actually learned it.
And I think we recorded that as well.
I think we did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we did it very well.
Before it was a hit in England.
Yeah, that's right.
It probably was a hit in America already.
And then I think the Four Tops brought it out and it went straight to number 1 and we had to shelve it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I had a Futurama bass that my mum bought me from a music store in Wembley first for a couple of years that I liked. And Andrew was very instrumental in teaching me stuff. He was very, very influential. Yeah, and then I got the Rickenbacker when I was 16. Not really one thing particularly, just like the Beatles catalogue and the Stones and stuff. I just started to learn stuff. You see, it's like playing an instrument is like an ever-evolving scenario anyway. So what was on the original record probably now is not the way I play older songs or even like later songs. Because all the time one's technique develops, through time, and that's the joy of music in a way. Really, it's like it's in the fact you can actually improve on what you did, and so I don't have one particular. As an afterthought for that, because Steve and I used to go down to the Cromwellian Club where you know, like it was a bit of a late
So
night
local
club,
disco, you know. It was
you
more
know,
of a nightclub.
where, you know, where the most likely to go home with you chicks were, and stuff like that, who, you know, never ever spoke to you. Now, of course, they were all at this Jimi Hendrix gig, and I was sitting on the piano at the back. So next time I went down the Cromwellian, it was like, oh, Chris. What? You've never looked at me before. Oh, no, we saw you on stage with Jimmy. Oh, yeah, well, me and Jim. Yeah. Yeah, so that was like a little side of the effect of the, you know, suddenly I became popular with the women at the Cromwellian who had never looked at me the week before. So we were like, you know, like there were the Beatles and the Stones and everyone sitting there in these seats. And like, end of our song, they all going. And later, when I got to know Pete Townsend better, after I'd, you know, I'd become well known, I said to him, "Do you remember that day when you saw The Sin?" And he said, "I said, was everyone just going, great, get off?" Or did you like? And he goes, "Actually, no, I really liked you. I thought you was a good band." You know? So Pete Townsend gave me that endorsement, but I had no idea why everyone else. And of course, then what happened was. We went off and everyone was like, and we were still completely confused about why the hell all these people were there and why the place was packed to the rafters. And of course, Jimi Hendrix came on with Noel Redding and Mitch Mitchell. And it was like, I thought, I couldn't even get out of the dressing room. It was so packed. Right. So I went and sort of did this posy move and like laid on the piano that was at the back of the stage. Because, you know, like, I was doing this sort of thing, you know, because I just was so intrigued about what the fuck was going to happen. And then Jimi Hendrix played his first ever show in London, and, you know, I watched all my heroes melt. And we were all, like, back to the Marquee Club, and this poor assistant manager, Jack Barry, is taking 10 bob notes, which they, in those days, I think was what it cost, which is about £0.50, 50p or whatever it is. It wasn't that expensive, but he was just like massacred with people throwing money at him. And I said, "Jack, what's going on?" He goes, I don't know. And then, so we go back, get in the dressing room, and then the manager, who is like this sort of colourful gentleman called John,
I wonder what you're going to say then.
called John G, who liked nurturing younger bands at the club, and I think he liked Peter Banks quite a bit. But
as I remember,
and he always used to come in and go, 2 minutes, gentlemen, and we're saying, John, what's going on? Why is this club so packed? Because this band were rehearsing, they just sounded terrible. He goes, I don't know either. And so the way the Marquee Club was set up, there was about 1,000 people, and there was like 4 or 5 rows of seats in the front. You know, about 10 seats, 4 rows, about 40 seats. Everyone else is standing. So we walk on stage. You know, good evening, everyone. I'm adjusting my mic, everyone. I'm looking down. Eric Clapton, John Lennon, Pete Townsend. Keith Moon, George Harrison, Mick, Keith, every one of my rock and roll heroes at the time was sitting in these 40 seats. Every one. And we're like, Steve's for our first song, let's do. We go down to the Gioconda, which is this little cafe down the street from the Marquee Club, and we were all like, what's the cheapest thing on the menu?
Looks like starters only.
You know, I know what it was, something pretty pathetic. You know, we're sitting there, and our meals were all depressed. And suddenly the line, or the queue as they call it in England, for the club starts to come past the restaurant, and we're all going, rum baba for dessert.
Rum babas all round, that's true.
But we had no idea why. And then we all struggled our way back into the club. But I actually have to, before I say this part, prior to that, I always used to change my bass strings before a show, and we'd set our gear up in front of this other band, and I'm in the dressing room, and being from an English public school background, and there'd been a couple of guys from India there at my school, but I'd never actually spoken to a black guy from America in my life ever before. So I'm in this dressing room, and this guy says to me, "Oh, a friend of mine in Seattle has got a Rickenbacker bass like that." I went, "Oh, very nice." Just changing my strings, because in those days, guitarists didn't really talk to bass players. It was very secty, back in those days. Some guitarists talk to other guitarists in other bands, but they don't talk to the bass player. So here's this black guy who apparently was playing guitar, talking to me for about half an hour. No clue who he was, except he was in this band that couldn't learn 7 notes.
We found each other at the country club in this battle of the bands, and in terms of, I found the Selfs anyway, and that's when I first saw and heard Chris. And well, I can't remember clearly. I don't know if whether you can, Chris, how that came about.
I can't really either.
It just and there was basically 2 of your guys, the guitarist John Wheatley. Yeah, John Wheatley.
Oh.
Do you remember John? Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was you had John Wheatley and Chris Slater was replaced by myself and John Painter, and Martin Edelman was on drums, of course, in those days. And that's the band. And off we went. And we seemed to get gigs immediately, didn't we? We seemed to be always. We ended up. We played the Lyceum that night with. Do you remember? It turned out to be the Fleetwood Mac group with Mick Fleetwood on drums. They had Peter Green on guitar.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do.
And we went up jamming with them afterwards, and there was a kind of a start. It all started from there. We just seemed to have loads of
gigs.
I don't know what, but I don't know how we came together. I don't remember. I'm not quite sure how that happened. Yeah, that was.
Well, it was just unbelievable.
That was the greatest night in Sin's history.
Because it was like Jimmy's
When you
first
opened for
ever
Jimi
show
Hendrix.
in England ever.
Yeah.
And he'd been trying to teach Noel Redding to play Purple Haze, and he couldn't figure the notes out, and so he didn't do that one. It was just like the most incredible thing. I mean, can you imagine? We're the support band, and there's all our heroes sitting down in front of us in the seats. Steve Winwood, everyone, every fucking person.
It's unbelievable.
Oh, for our next song.
Hello. And it's remembered, as the greatest night in Marquee history.
Yeah.
And there's been some nights, and that's remembered historically as the greatest night in the Marquee history.
Yeah.
So it was a sort of Sin's peak, I guess you could say.
Yeah, and we went home with £15 basic plus £50 bonus or something.
Yeah.
In those days that
Full of rum barbars. we were all right,
Well, as I was just saying to Steve, I remember us recording Heatwave and very with Peter Huggett and what were the other things? It's all right.
It's all right. We did. The first thing we ever did was merry-go-round with that Paul Corder track.
Yeah,
that acetate
Paul Corder,
thing.
Yeah. The interesting thing about bands of that time, we were sort of like a little bit in the wake of the Who and the Action, and the thing about what London bands were doing then was doing an English rock Motown thing, which we liked, and we sort of carried on with that. It was kind of good because we had the harmonies and stuff, and Steve had the Rod Stewart Seal voice. Actually, he sounds like Seal, by the way. I haven't realised. If you listen back to the early synth stuff, it sounds just like Seal. Unbelievable. But but he had the Rod image and stuff going, so he was a good lead singer enough for the band. But but Andrew and myself, having been in the choir, was all like, "Oh, let's do this harmony. We'll do the fifth and the third."
And no one else was doing that, were they? I mean, really,
no, the Action,
except the Action. Yeah.
And the Who kind of did it actually, in a way.
Yeah. Bit more rough edge to what we did.
Yeah. Well, we were a bit more God, this sounds like Spinal Tap, doesn't it? We were a bit more vocally oriented, and strangely enough, of course, really what happened as things filtered down is that a lot of the influence actually got into Yes at the beginning of Yes as well, especially as Peter Banks, who was the guitar player in the Sin, after John Painter, and then he was the first guitar player in Yes, and so some of the influences and the ideas of vocal harmonies sort of started kick the ball off of where John and I started, Yes, and kind of a lot of the things were similar. Yeah, well, yes, it's great. It's great that Steve's sort of put it all together, and
I think we want to remember also it's come together in memory of Chris has mentioned him, his great friend and my great friend Andrew Price Jackman, who was really the father figure of the Sin right through its history.
Yeah.
And sadly he passed away last year, and that's kind of what kick-started this.
Yeah, Andrew was a great guy, and of course he carried on working with me on A Fish Out of Water, my solo album, which is probably a lot more about him than me, actually. Great guy. And he was like, as Steve said, he was like the music guy. Okay, you sing this note, and he was like the
classically trained at Trinity College in London, and he was a very, very talented musician and arranger later in his life, classically, and he brought that classic thing. He was able to mix that classic background with the sort of rock and roll.
Yeah, he
his own style, clearly.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant. There are various songs that Yes has done through different eras that have merits for different reasons. Heart of the Sunrise was always a great blueprint for the kind of Yes arrangement in a 10-12 minute sort of piece, because of the way it went from a little bit frenetic part to a more of a lullaby song, to a little synthesizer passage section, and seemed to have, by the time you got to the end, a completeness about it. So it stands out in terms of arrangement as a Yes classic. And then, of course, Own of the Lonely Heart was a huge record for us for completely different reasons, with different people involved, Trevor Horn and Trevor Rabin, than the current lineup, and so all through Yes's career that you will see that there are different songs for different reasons that have merits. So it's not like, and it's like apples and oranges, a lot of it. You can't really say that's better than that one. Of course, there's the long Peace Syndrome that we did, in Close to the Edge, and then maybe overdid in Topographic Oceans, and some people thought so, some people didn't. But it's good that we took the chance to do something that weird, because in a way it allowed us to continue to do something different after that. Maybe Peter Banks might have something to do,
it
because
wasn't
he was
actually.
in a band called the Syndicats or something.
That was just a massive coincidence. I tell you, the Sin actually came from the original Sin guitarist before Banks, John Painter.
Oh my God!
I
remember his flat.
Yeah.
In Amsterdam.
Yeah. We spent a few days there.
By the time the police came around with Synchronicity, it was like, maybe SYM meant something. I don't know if it did, did it?
No, I've no idea. The only thing I can think was in those days, everyone wanted a short name like The Who. And the thing we liked about the Sin was it was that three-letter name. But
I think it was something to do with Sin something.
Syndication, something,
like that.
They're coming together. Yeah.
We get there to the Marquee Club, a very rainy day, and a cobblestoney place behind the club. And we go in there, and there's three geezers on stage, like, rehearsing. And, it was really weird, because the Marquee Club never had anyone rehearsing there. And then this guy, Jack Barry, who was the assistant manager, came down, and I wandered out the front, and I said to said to him, Jack, what is this band doing rehearsing? Because we've got all our gear out of our van, and Cliff Bennett has got to set up first, so we can set up in front of him. And Jack goes, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what these people, who are they? And it was like, he had no clue, and he called like the marquee office. And meanwhile, I'm sitting there, and there's this black guy going to some guy, da, 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 da. And the bass player can't actually learn the riff. This is going on for about 10 minutes, you know, and I wanted to go up and say, no, it's da 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 da, because I thought, I don't know why this band were rehearsing in the Marquee Club. So eventually the black guy goes, oh, we won't do that tonight, and now I'm confused, like, and because they live in their gear on the stage, and I go back to the manager again. He goes, "Oh yeah, I've just talked to the office. Yeah, they're the main band tonight."
Yeah.
I said, "What? These guys have taken 10 minutes to learn 7 notes?" Well, I think the thing just came to a halt at a certain point when we thought that we weren't really going any further. I think it was a mutual decision, really.
Right at the end, Gunnar had left. I always thought when Gunnar left, that was kind of the beginning of the breaking up of the band, actually, because we never really placed him.
Right.
Well, did you think that?
He was an extraordinary drummer.
He was a great drummer, yeah.
Yeah, quite extraordinary.
And we
He was
never
in his own world,
replaced
really.
him, did we? I mean,
No, it just it came to a sort of a natural conclusion,
Yeah,
I think,
yeah.
and when you're that young too, you'll kind of like get a bit on each other's nerves as well, and get a bit like, you know. I remember once he like chased me up the street and beat me up because I said something.
it's
to him.
not true. He always mentions this. But we just had a bit of a ruckus.
He was a bit of a tough lad, you know. He's young,
But
he was like from the Italian, he was like, yeah. And his dad always used to call him Steven, my boy.
Yeah, that's true. That's a very
Yes, he was,
That's
yeah.
a very good description of what Andrew was.
Yeah.
He was the father figure of the band. He was the balance of the band. Yeah, you're right. And he was also a wonderful human being, a really nice person, and it was a great loss to his family, obviously, and to everyone who ever knew him, and to music actually, that he died so young. It's very sad.
Yeah, I know. And in those days, that seemed like a really long
was
time.
forever.
Yeah.
Because, when people often ask me about, well, did you think Yes would have a 35th anniversary? And I go, actually, when we started Yes, it was like the Beatles were visible really from like 63, from Love Me Do, even though they'd been in the clubs at Germany and whatever. But, they were like the visible thing. And by 69, they'd broken up. And that was a huge career in rock and roll, a 6-year career. And
Yeah.
so the fact that Yes actually kind of like, went on to do this like 35 thing is, we could never have foreseen that. But at the time when we were in the Sin, it was like, Steve says 2.5 years. It seemed a lot longer than that then, because that seemed like a pretty good chunk of a career. Because careers didn't span that distance.